All right. We are live on Facebook. Hello, friends and family, and all our supporters. Welcome to Ask Our Expert program in the month of April. So, April is Autism Awareness Month, and we want to acknowledge and salute all our special individuals who have been given this diagnosis. Is by not any means detrimental to you at all, but it just recognizing how special you are and how blessed you are in so many ways. And we want to acknowledge and salute all the parents and the caregivers because it really takes tremendous effort to pull together all the resources. Sometimes it's necessary to make sure that that individual gets the best care that they can. So my goal is just to kind of work along with you. And I'm really passionate about ensuring that we recognize, we acknowledge, we are able to say that it is hard. It's not easy at all. And I am a prime example of that in my world that I'm in right now. When Nicholas turning, and he's going to be 20 soon. Oh my God. I don't look like a woman that has a 20-year-old. I am going to say that right now. I'm blessed to have a very incredible genes. That's why thanks to my father. If you see my father, you will never believe he's 70. Um, so I have a 20-year-old. And I also have to give a shout out to my 22-year-old son who's graduating this year from college. So I'm so incredibly proud of her. She's graduating with a degree in biomedical engineering. And so I'm just, giving her the kudos for working her butt off and being able to complete her degree. And so if I'm bragging, forgive me, but engineering is hard. And then what is biomedical engineering? And she's graduating with honors on top of that too. So I'm a parent that is just like hats off and a great job. So okay, now I paid my dues, so so it's Autism Awareness Month, and like any other month, we believe in providing education. And so we've been creative since last year of doing this series called Ask the Expert. And this month, I'm bringing back a dear friend, a colleague, someone who has traveled with me. She's not a stranger to many of you who have been part of the Michael family. She's been here multiple times, and I can never, anytime I think about key people that I need on my team who are here. Hillary Freeman is definitely one of them. And from a personal standpoint, she came into my life at a time when I was now trying to figure out which direction to go with Nick and look at it globally and not look at Nicholas requiring extra needs as something negative, but really being open to the fact that sometimes you're going to have to do something different in order to make their life more better. So we were traveling to Liberia at a time when she was able to kind of give me a background of what she went through with her own brother. So that's been I always look back to that time and I'm just like, God, thank you for allowing this woman to be in my life for that time because it gave me peace of mind. Because somebody else who had walked that journey, who knew what you were describing. Some things I can't even publicly talk about here because people think about it and they're like, wow. But when you talk to other people who are walking the journey, it gives you such a peace of mind knowing that you just have to take it one day at a time. And that's been my journey, and that's what I stick to. One day at a time, one moment at a time. Sometimes I have the answer, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you think you're going a particular direction and it feels like it's a dead end. Then you turn around and go the opposite way, right? While you're turning around, you're like, man, I wish I had known that I didn't have to go this way. But regardless, that's what life does. And in every way, I'm very grateful. So I am so pleased to have Hillary Freeman back with us on Ask the Expert. And she's really going to bring it from a different perspective than the topic she's talked to us in the past. But I invited our friends to join us, families who can join us in the Zoom room, just because if you have questions, we want to take them. If you're watching us on Facebook and you have questions, we'll take it. Because our vision is really to ensure that you are not walking around feeling very helpless and hopeless. And if somebody can give you an advice that will help you to pull it together, then you know that you can continue to provide the care for your loved one. So on this note, I'm going to welcome Hillary Freeman. Hillary, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please, please, please introduce yourselves and tell us about that picture that's behind you.
Genevieve, thank you. You know how much I love you. Um, Hi, everybody. My name is Hillary Freeman from Freeman Law Offices, and I've been advocating for individuals with special needs across their lifespan. I've been doing it for 15 years, and we do it around the country, but primarily New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So the picture behind me is, I'm going to do my sit-ups so you can see everything. This isn't a weird photo. And this is when I went with Genevieve and a few others, Rebecca Zagas, and Dr. Lorraine, Reverend Lorraine, to Ghana, and we also went to Liberia a few years ago. And this is the school in Ghana where we had such a great time. We worked with the kids, we played with the kids. We just had such a great time at the school, and it was one amazing experience meeting parents in Ghana. And so that is what, and this picture is in the backyard of the school. We got everybody together in their backyard, and I think we got most people looking at the camera. But it was just such a cool experience, and I can't wait to go back. So that's what this is about, and I just had to have this in my background because it brings me joy every time I look at it, amongst any of the other pictures. So if you ever want to see them, certainly reach out, because I will post them and share them happily. So today I'm going to be talking about really how to forge a bond, and plan with your family on the future of for your child with a developmental disability, with autism is one of them. I'm a sibling. My brother is autistic. He is 49 years old. Cognitively, I used to say cognitively he's a 3-year-old, and the reason that I used to say that is because he watches Sesame Street. He's nonverbal. He acts at a level of a 3-year-old, but Genevieve and I haven't had a chance to talk about this yet, but we are learning through multiple forms of communication that he has a lot more knowledge than we ever knew because he's nonverbal. So now he has an augmentative communication device where he is learning to express himself and answer questions and things that we never could get information out. And he's able to make correlations with, like, pets, a dog and a cat. We say, what do they have in common? And he says, he points to pets, and we never knew that he had that knowledge, but we do now.
Yeah.
So so I'm not going to say cognitively he's a 3-year-old. I will say that he does watch Sesame Street. He is my I love him to death. He is a wonderful, wonderful person. I don't know what age he is cognitively, but that doesn't matter. He has his own individual needs, his own individualized potential, and we're learning as we go. And he's 49 years old. So we're learning as we go. And like Genevieve said, it's one day at a time, one moment at a time. So I don't know the ages of everybody and all of their, mostly your children. So I'm gonna talk as though, and if you want me to target one particular age group, or if you want to text me or text a question, I'm happy, or even call out, I'm happy to answer any questions. But I'm going to be talking to you today, not only from the legal perspective, but a personal perspective on what we have found effective to plan for our meaning siblings independence, and also fostering an environment, fostering a relationship where we are present and available to work with our parents to prepare for the future of our loved one with special needs. So to start out with, I'm going to start out just, and by the way, this is very informal, so really ask me any questions that you want. When we were children, my sister and when we were children, we always had a very close relationship with my brother. I mean, there's no question about it. He's always incredibly happy, or he has been in the past. He's generally really happy when we're all together. We're watching Sesame Street. When we were kids, we used to run around and switch swings and climb trees, and we would pick on my brother, like just like everybody else, the other kids do. We would have him, pick the bark of a tree, bark off of the tree, and then we would get in trouble for it and blame him when he was just following our directions. Um, we we played just like everybody else. We played Nintendo together. We were always very close. One thing that my parents did, and I know as an adult, I now know what happened, but we didn't know that this was happening at the time. Um, my parents didn't just they weren't the only ones that took care of us. It was a family knit. They got other people involved as much as they could. My brother was in public school initially at a very young age, and then he went to a school about 40 minutes away from to drive him to school. They had to get services for him. As they were learning what his needs were. During that time, my parents had us involved in sports, in other activities. So we were preoccupied and we weren't focusing on it. We weren't thinking. My parents weren't there for us. They were there for us when we needed them to be, but they were also obviously had to pay a lot of attention to my brother. So we didn't build a lot of resentment, although I know some articles, if you research things, you'll see siblings could resent their child with special needs or their sibling with special needs. We didn't have that experience. It also We didn't have that experience because I think we were preoccupied. And we were preoccupied with sports, after school activities, as my parents were taking care of my brother and his needs. And then at night, we had a lot of one-on-one attention with my parents as my brother was doing something else. So I'm not going to say it was an easy task for them, but I can say from our perspective, it wasn't something that we noticed very much because we were preoccupied. So I say this because if you are concerned and nervous about your neurotypically developing children, that is just something to pay attention to. That when they're preoccupied, I don't know that they're paying as much attention to your child with special needs. But on top of that, what's in my what you I don't know, maybe Sen is older, but I was born into this environment.
Actually,
Okay.
it's kind of interesting you say that because Delali used that same terminology before. Delali's the
Okay.
little one, and she used the exact same
Yeah.
thing. She said, I was born into this environment.
Right. So we don't know any different,
Mhm.
right? So my brother's older than me. And we don't know any different. This is what we know. We know growing up that my loves food and he loves finishing everything. And I mean all of his food. So all of the food that's available. If there's a box of Cheez-Its, it will be gone in 5 minutes. If there's a bottle of soda in the fridge, it will be gone. So I grew up hiding food and not knowing where it was going to be, whether it was going to be behind the pillows on the couch, whether it was going to be
Wow.
in the laundry room, we had no idea where the food was, but we just got used to it. And we got used to playing football in the house. He would come after us and we would throw the food to somebody else in the house to hide. It was just something that we did.
Wow.
So I do think that there is a difference when you're born into this environment versus having your sibling with special needs born after you. I do think there's a difference in perspective. But so I'm just talking a little bit personally, and I will also talk about as we get older, what, professionally, what steps should be put in place, or I would recommend that I thought were helpful. So the younger years were developing the relationships and building a bond, and we didn't bring my brother on every vacation. My parents had my brother staying with my grandparents, with my aunt, with a babysitter. They didn't bring my brother on every vacation because they wanted to give us the attention, one. And you would think that by this conversation I'm very needy, but which I am, but that's not the purpose of this. um, they wanted dedicated time, and as much as I love my brother, he definitely required a lot of our time and energy. So they didn't take him on every vacation, and but he came on some, but not on all vacations. So that's just, and we developed a very close family knit. So I don't think, and you can feel what you want. I'm not here to say what you should feel and not feel, but I'm saying that we didn't bring my brother on every vacation, and I'm sure there was this level of guilt with my parents associated with it, but everybody turned out okay.
Mm.
Okay, so it's my brother was happy and hit wherever he was at that time. He loved my family, he loved my grandparents, he loved wherever he was happy, and we were happy being all together also. So it wasn't I so you I'm not gonna ever say don't feel something, but we turned out okay.
Mm.
Um, so, and then as we got older, it we're starting to turn 21. He was in two emergency placements earlier than that, because of his behaviors. He ran around at my sister's sweet 16 and my sweet 16. He ran around the pool naked. It was, we got used to these things. My friends may have been a little traumatized, but we were used to it. So these are things that we got used to, but he did have his behaviors. He did definitely had a lot of aggressions. He would push, he would pull, he would run. He headbang. Well, he didn't really headbang that much, but he definitely, he couldn't put on certain shirts if he had. Sometimes, depending on his mood, if he had a zipper on it, he would take it right off. Sometimes he only wanted a shirt with a zipper. He always had to take the tags off of everything, whether it be his own clothes or Elmo dolls. The tags had to come off right away. These are things that we just got used to, and setting the environment up where we would minimize behaviors. Okay, so I'm sharing these stories because I get it, and I'm sure you've experienced, if maybe not all of these stories together, but something in this, one of these stories I'm sure you could relate to. And so these are things that we have learned and we just got used to over time. But as my brother got older, my parents were concerned about making sure that he was in the right place when he got older. We always knew we would be there for him. We would take care of him if we needed to. We would be there in 2 seconds. We are there in 2 seconds if he needs us. But my parents didn't want to put the onus on us to take care of him for the rest of our lives. And I don't say onus in a negative way, because we would take care of him in 2 seconds. My parents recognized that as we got older, we were going to have our own lives too, and I think that they have. I don't. I think that he was placed in a group home when he was 21. And yes, there have been challenges associated with it, but as we got older, we know that we can be there, and we watch my parents do this. We can be there in 2 seconds. He comes on vacations with us. He comes home. We all take him out and do take him on different events, or take him to different activities. He's still a part of our lives, but he's over the age of 18. He was 21 at the time. Kids move out. Okay, so he was given his independence, and we saw that he was still going to be involved in our lives. We were still going to be involved in his, but he wasn't. But he wasn't going to. We didn't have to be there at every single second, and he would still be okay. Okay, so I've never talked about this, quite honestly. This is literally my first time talking
Wow.
so openly about this, so
Well,
publicly.
no, Hillary, I want to say that this is very helpful. I'm in the chat, people are putting comments there. And so I want to say thank you, because truly what you're saying is just so liberating for families that are listening. So I just want to say thank you in advance. So yeah, I'm hearing you talk about it and I'm like, yeah, a couple of us, I know one or two people who are online now, are
Mhm.
exactly there, 20, and
Good.
debating whether it's okay to let him go. I mean,
Yeah.
and for me personally, that's really been the struggle, is that am I being fair to him by not being there for him 24 hours? But
Uh,
realistically, I can't.
right. Realistically, you can't real and quite honestly, people move out. Kids move out and it doesn't matter if they have special needs or not. You might have a different level of involvement. They might have a different level of dependence on you,
Mhm.
but it's okay for them to move out. And you'll be there in 2 seconds. You're very much involved in their lives as parents. You're advocates. You don't This doesn't go away because they move out, right? Your 23-year-olds, your 25-year-olds, you're still involved in their lives, right? It's okay for them to move out. And I know you are scared. A lot of you might be scared of abuse if they're not living with you. You're scared they're not going to have the lifestyle that they have with you. They're not. Won't happen. Okay, they are going to have a very different lifestyle. That's okay. Okay, so they will be have the lifestyle with you when they're with you, and and you will take every step, and I will share with you how to do it, to maximize their developmental potential as they get older, and make sure services are in place. Okay, I'm also not going to say that abuse doesn't happen. It
Yeah.
does. There's no question about it. It is scary when it happens. There's no question about that either, but the things are evolving to minimize the chances of that happening. Meaning, years ago, when and even group homes have changed, the styles of group homes have changed over the years. So I'm giving you this little bit of a background, and then I'll get into it more detail. But cameras are now allowed in group homes where they weren't years ago. So there are recording. Staff know that they are recording. So that is something that steps are being taken. Better training is available. And also, by the way, the more parents are stay involved in their child's life, even if they're not living at home, then chances of them being hurt or abused hopefully will go down. I'm not going to say it will, but I hopefully it will go down. Or be reduced. So that is something that it's just so it's hard. There's no question about it. But um I can all I can say is that I would not change. We would not change anything. And my brother has been hurt. Candidly, he has been hurt, and it went a long time ago. And we got through it. And it was hard, but we are definitely on top of things. And any questions? I'm not going to talk about that more publicly, but I will talk about it privately if anybody ever wants to reach out. But he is doing phenomenally, and so I'll talk about how we got there, and I'll also talk to you about how I advise my clients. But he is doing phenomenally now. Like I said, he's 49 years old, and he's learning new things every day. And just to talk about the group homes, he's been in the models in the adult services world has changed. He has been in a group home since he was 21, with 4 to 5 other guys, 3 other staff. And he is moving into his own supervised apartment in a few weeks. So there are going to be 2 people in an apartment in the community. So he will be moving, and he'll have his own staff. They'll do their own activities. But it's a model that is now better for him. So that is something it's just the and that wasn't available when he first moved into group homes. It's now available for all of your children. If they're not in a placement now, or even if they are, that's available to you. But it hasn't been available. It wasn't available when we were going through it. So even that point, the system is evolving. Okay. Any questions so
Fair
far?
comment. How were you guys able to make that decision to say we should do this and let him go? I mean, what kind of
So
steps did you walk through?
fair question. happy if this goes. This isn't obviously confidential. It is often easier to get or used to be. I shouldn't say it is now. It's the same. It's easier at any point now, but at the time, it was easier to get a long-term placement when your child was graduating from high school. So if you got it right when they graduated, it was much easier to get a placement and you could jump the wait list than it is now. Now it's easy. It's easier at any point. It's not nearly as challenging as it was when my brother was being placed. So it was hard. It was hard. My brother moved to a group home and my sister went to college all in the same year.
Wow.
And my parents wanted to make sure a spot became available. He was in a placement that my parents trusted. And I say that them because I was too young at the time to make that decision. And I think it's been a phenomenal, I shouldn't say phenomenal, it's been a great experience while he's been there. My parents have always been concerned about us in addition to my brother. They really didn't want him to consume our lives. They wanted us to have as much independence as possible. They wanted us to have him involved in our lives. We wanted to be involved in his life, but they wanted to make sure we had our own life too. And that has been great. I mean, it turns out that because of that, I went into the special need. I shouldn't say because of that, but because I would say largely because of my brother, I went into this field. I went into the path of advocating for people with special needs. And that has been great. I love everything that I do. But they were really focused on making sure that we were afforded our own lives too, and we could go in our own direction. So combined, it was just the right timing, the right timing, and everything panned out okay. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
It's very different talking about a personal perspective than from me advising you, right? Because what I would say as a lawyer, I would say this is the right time, kids move. I've been saying all the right things, but from a personal perspective, I can tell you a lot of advice is based on some personal experiences. So we went through it. We did the same thing. And my parents also knew that if it didn't work out, they could bring him home again if they needed to. It's a hard decision to make when you're going to have your child come back home with you. It does raise some questions on the state and on DDD's part. DDD is a Division of Developmental Disabilities. That's the state agency that provides services to adults with disabilities. And they have some questions when people come home from group homes, whether they really need the support. But you deal with that at the time. If you need to take your child out of the placement because it's not working, you can make decisions whether you want to transfer them to another program or you want them to come home again and make other arrangements. It doesn't have to be permanent. It can be if you are okay with it, but it doesn't have to be.
Hillary, we got a question.
Any questions about?
We got a question on Facebook. Somebody asked,
okay,
if an individual is their own guardian, is it only their decision to live in a group home?
You can guide them, but it is primarily their decision. Yes. You can guide them though to making the right decisions to move into an apartment or a group home. So for those of you who don't know, when your child turns 18, they are legally an adult. They can make their own decisions. They can be they can decide what they want to wear. They can decide their finances. They can manage their own finances. They can decide where they want to live. They can make all the decisions that they want as they turn 18. But some people, like my brother, for example, can't make their own decisions. So you have to go to court to say to the judge, I know he's an adult legally, but he still needs help making the decisions for himself. So we need to continue having the ability to make decisions and be appointed as his guardian. And then the judge will make a determination. I'm not going to go into all of the details right now on how to get to it, but it's a relatively short process. It's probably about 3 months on average, and you're going to court to say to the judge, I need to still be able to make decisions for my child. And that is what the process of being appointed as a guardian. And you can do limited or you can do a full guardianship. So you can make full decisions, every decision for them, or you can do carve outs and make the decisions that you just need to make for them. And the benefit of that is that you have if you know if your child doesn't agree with the decisions that you're making, and you know it's because of their disability, or they don't know that they're making the wrong decisions, or sometimes they just need more help, you're there to provide that support. So that's a very, very general overview of guardianship. But it is something that you really do need to do when your child turns 18 if they need a guardian. You can do it later if you haven't done it at 18, but you can do it later, but you should start thinking about it when your child turns 18. Again, you're not wrong if you haven't, but you should consider that process. So that's what guardianship is. And if you don't get guardianship, you don't have any rights to make decisions over them. So you can't afford them. So they can follow your guidance, but they're not legally obligated to.
So
Okay.
we got another question.
So go ahead.
We got another question from Facebook. They said, you mentioned your brother lives with other males. Is this common that they keep genders together?
Yes. I've definitely had clients who have mixed, but most of the time they're keeping genders together. They have, some programs have homes for girls and homes for boys, but most of the time, or apartments and then they do activities together, but most of the time they're living with their own gender. Okay. Other questions? What age can your child be put in a group home? It's based on level of need. It's not based on an age. So it used to be that, and to some extent, the guidelines still say that when both parents turn 55, they can then get onto a priority wait list. But you don't have to wait till both parents turn 55. If your child is in need of a group home sooner than that, then they can get into a program sooner than that. It's based on level of need. You look at severity of behaviors, you look at your health, whether your ability to take care of your child. You don't have to be concerned that they're going to call DCPNP and Division of Child Protective Services on you if you are having trouble taking care of your kid. They're not going to do that. The point is to provide services and supports to help make sure everybody is safe, healthy, and happy. And your child, who's now an adult, has a program designed to maximize their developmental potential. Okay, so you don't have to be concerned that they're but these are factors that you look at: your health, your ability to take care of your child, and their needs as well.
Hillary, that's a good point. So you made a point earlier about the fact that you can always bring them back home. So the goal here is that safety may be one of the issues, the reason why you might want to put that or allow that individuals to go to a group home, because traditionally people think that they're, not being responsible as a parent if you're sending their loved one into a group home. But in a setting where the safety is an issue, then what you have to think about is the best thing for that individual and the family. And that might mean bringing them into an environment where support services are around 24/7, so you as a parent can still function. Would you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's really, it's hard. It's hard to have, to be, as parents, as you get older, it's hard to always still take care of your child. It doesn't mean, full time. It doesn't mean you love them any less. It doesn't at all. It means that, what it means is you're doing the best thing for everyone. Okay. You have to, it's when you're making that decision, you're not just thinking about you. You're not just thinking about your child. You're not just thinking about the siblings. You're thinking about what's best as a whole, just like every other decision you have to make. And it's a difficult decision to make. And what I will tell you is that at a minimum, the first 6 months are going to be challenging for you. They're going to be hard emotionally for you, at a minimum 6 months. But I would say the 6 months as the average time that for you that it will take for you to get used to the idea and to develop some sort of routine. So if you're having trouble making that decision, yeah, you can look around. You will be able to see a program before your child is placed in it. You can look to different factors of what is the safety, what's the material of the glass? Is it plexiglass? Is it regular glass? If your child bangs their head against the wall, and glass is going to be a problem, you obviously don't want to place your child in a program that has regular glass. So you can look at where they keep chemicals like cleaning supplies and medication. You can look at all of these factors and ask questions before you place your child in the program. So consider that. And if you are reasonably satisfied with the program, try it out. But I will tell you, for the first 6 months are hard for you emotionally. You're going to be wondering if you made the right decision. You're going to be wondering whether your child is okay and is happy. And I will tell you, for the first, I'm going to say 5 years, every time we saw my brother, he would say, "I want home, I want home." And of course he wanted a home. We were fun people.
Oh,
We have a great time. And he did come home with us, and he didn't want to go back, but he was fine when he was there. We have pictures of him laughing after we left. He just, for 5 years, I think it took for him to stop saying, "I want home." And then he just got, I'm exaggerating, I really don't remember the time. It just seemed like a really long time when we were going through it, where he kept on saying, "I want home." And look, he went back anyway, and he was fine. And now, I mean, when we see him with his staff, it is hysterical. I mean, the staff love him. He loves them. He blushes. I think he has a crush on his one-to-one, because he turns completely red every time he sees her. And he has this huge smile on his face. The guys, the staff are high-fiving him, fist bumping him. They take him out to activities. Like, everybody's so happy. I mean, and they you can tell he has a good, we'll have meetings, and we'll have meetings to talk about his program, and maybe like, oh, a staff member might be late to the meeting, and this was when everybody was in person, and he was sitting down and a staff to sit next to him. I mean, you can see the relationships forming, and it's really cool to see. I have to say, I am so appreciative of all the staff that work with him. It's really cool to see the bond when it's also with somebody other than us. We love him, we have a bond, we know that, but it's fun to see him form bonds with other people. And they experience things that we don't share with him necessarily, and he gets to generalize those skills. So I'm so grateful for the staff that work with him. They're wonderful. So any other questions about any of that? Okay. So these are, yes, these are challenging conversations, but something that I want to talk about, what things go through the sibling's mind and what things go through a parent's mind as you get older. And I think I need to separate it a little bit as a list, because these are just things that people, I know I've seen others, I've talked to other siblings, what goes through their mind, what in planning for the future. One thing on the siblings' perspective, what might go through their mind is, first of all, what are managing expectations? What are my responsibilities in this? Okay, as I can tell you that as a younger child, I always felt like I was the adult, and my brother would follow my direction no matter what age I was. Right, so I could have been 4 and he was listening to me. I could have been 10 and he was listening to me. I was always I grew up faster, I think, than other neurotypically developing children because I always had somebody following my directions. Right, and I was giving him rules. I was setting rules for him, but as I got older and as I know other siblings have gotten older, the question comes through their mind: what are the expectations for the future?
Mm.
What at what point do I step in as my parents get older? What are their expectations of me? I know, and I've heard many of my clients say, my children say absolutely no to group homes. They say they will be there for him no matter what. They love him. I know they're going to be involved in their life. No question. I hope that that's the case. I'm not doubting it at all. Okay. I've also had other kids who have other families who have said my child wants nothing to do with my child with a disability. That does happen too. But basically, the theme is what are the expectations of me as I get older, um, and what how will I know what their needs are, their medical needs. My parents, I will say, as young, when we were younger, they weren't involving us in the conversations. They weren't involving us in any of the discussions around my brother's needs. As we got older, we got more involved in it. Okay. But my parents have the experience of knowing my brother's allergies, the medications that they've tried and his reactions to them, the behavioral approaches that they've tried and the reactions to them when they have that experience. And sometimes when parents get older and their siblings take over, they seem blindsided.
Mhm.
Okay. Because they haven't been involved in the decisions or just taking over, and they don't know what was tried and didn't try and wasn't tried, and needs change. You have to take one thing, you always take one day at a time, right? So I think it's important to, if you're not going to include them in every single meeting, write it down somewhere. Okay, write down your experiences, write down the medications of what you've tried and haven't been effective, so your children aren't left trying these things again, okay, and wasting their time. It's also, who do we contact, right? Who's involved, who's on the team, making a list of that's from a child who's going to take over. Make a list of all of the doctors and all of and the people that are involved, what role they have, what responsibilities they have, who to contact when, because it can be overwhelming, as the siblings are taking over. Okay. Also making, and as they get older, keeping them involved in the decisions. Okay, but not saying you have to do this. I wouldn't suggest mandating you have to be a part of every decision, because as we all know, the minute children are told they have to do something, they're running in the other direction, right? So you might want to try to encourage them and understand the benefits of their involvement, but also point out that you're not overlooking their needs as well. Okay. So a conversation that we had with my parents was, he's in a group home, he will be there, he is fine, but we are going to be, and we learned by example. My parents, they're still on the phone with the group home every single day, making multiple times a day, finding out how he's doing. They're FaceTiming, so are we. We watch by example, and I would, so if your children see it, they can see the level of involvement you have, and how you don't have to be there every single minute, and they're okay.
Mhm.
Okay. It's also important to, I think, to share with them how they can be involved, but also have their own life. It's so as a lot of parents might think that children can take over at 21, and they can do their will and their trust and set it up so their typical children can get involved at 21. that's not setting them up to have their own life. Okay. They're in college sometimes at 21, right? They don't get out of it. They maybe go to grad school. Even if they're not, they're still young where they're learning their own independence.
Mm.
And if you don't have anyone else, I understand appointing them earlier, in a role, giving them more responsibilities at 21, 22. But if you have other people, I would encourage you to appoint other people in those roles to help out with the care of your child with special needs, and then give your neurotypically developing children the choice of serving when they turn maybe 25 or 30, because depending on where they are in their lives. Okay, so I think that, by giving them the choice, I'm sure, of course, they're going to step in. They could serve with somebody else in certain roles, like guardian and trustee. Or they can serve by themselves. The world is your oyster, as I like to say. There are multiple options that will fit your situation, but give them the choice. And I would not set the expectation that they are going to take over at 21, because you could potentially, I'm not going to say you could potentially deprive them of their ability to form their own choices and just make their own choices of where they want to live, what they want to do, etc. Questions about any of that?
Let me ask you this question. You talked about guardianship earlier. At what point does the parent turn over or include the sibling into being quote unquote co-guardians, if ever? Is there a need for that?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a personal choice. As your children get older, and so globally, I mean, I'm going to say generally, parents can apply to be their own guardian or co-guardians when they turn 18. Generally speaking, you can appoint a backup in your will, so you have your guardian until you pass away, and then the person that you appoint in your will can be appointed as backup guardian, and it's a much simpler process for them to get appointed as guardian than it is for you at the initial stages. Okay. So you can do that through your will. A lot of parents, as they're getting older, are appointing their neurotypically developing children as co-guardians while they're alive. And that's totally okay to do. Just keep in mind that when they are appointed as co-guardians, they have the exact same ability to make decisions as you do. And sometimes that can lead to some conflicts. so use your judgment. That's a personal decision. They can serve at any time after they turn 18 as a co-guardian or as a sole guardian, but just keep that in mind, that they have the exact same ability to make decisions as you do once they're appointed as co-guardian while you're alive. My sister and I are co-guardians with my parents now. We weren't always this way. We are now, because we are getting more involved in their care. And we have been for years, but we're getting even more involved. I'm very influential in the legal mind, and my sister, being in the medical profession, is much more involved in the medical decisions. And my parents are still very much involved, but we have assumed our roles. If they fell into place and it works really, really well, that might work for some people, that might not work for others. It's just a personal decision. But that's a great question. As your children, so they're thinking about also at what point they should get more involved. And like I said, parents, you can talk about it with them. Sometimes your children will be more pushy. So it's a question for you whether you're okay giving them some I should say, leaning on them a little bit more, and respecting their opinion, because I'm sure their neurotypically developing children are coming from a very different perspective than you as the parents. The research has evolved. I can tell you, when my brother was growing up, the behavioral approaches were, we make decisions for my brother. Now it's person first planning, and me being involved in the profession, I know that So the approach to working with my brother is changing, and I think both perspectives are valuable and they bring a lot to the table. So it's okay to talk to your children about what their opinions are. It's also important to be asking your children your neurotypically developing children, if they have any idea where they want to live when they grow up. If they're going to be involved in a relationship, something that they have to keep in mind is when they're involved in a relationship, their partner or spouse will have to accept your child with disability as well. It's not just them at this point, so that can impact their relationships. And how will that play out? I can tell you that we've been very lucky in that my brother-in-law, when he found out my brother liked Sesame Street, started running on, and before he married my sister, started when he was running on the treadmill, he would watch Sesame Street skits so he can memorize them, and talk to my brother, and now they're best friends. And we just took my brother to Sesame Place, and so we're lucky to have found partners that are very much involved and love my brother as much as we do. It doesn't always happen that way, but I'm bringing factors to the table. I'm not saying it's going to happen this way. I'm giving you factors to consider when planning. And I'm sorry if it's overwhelming, but it's exciting and hard all at the same time. So bear with me as I just kind of throw everything out there for you.
Well, I think that for those who are going to watch later, there's so much you're putting out there on the table that even when they come back to it later, it'll help them tremendously, knowing that, wow, this is how she dealt with it. And you touched on something I was going to ask you about right there, which is what about moving out of state for the sibling? And I think you commented a little bit on that. Can you touch on that a little bit? How did you make that decision to stay local versus move away?
Well, for my practice is local. It's in Princeton. And my brother lives in Robbinsville. I picked the location of my practice because I knew I was going to be, and he wanted to be close to my brother. But siblings, we moved into Pennsylvania, although we still are, I still work in New Jersey. We don't have to live in the same state. I have clients who their siblings were in New Jersey, and they were living in Missouri and Colorado. It's where the individual lives, your child with special needs at the time. They can move them to wherever your neurotypically developing siblings or children can move out of state, and if they are the guardians, they can take your child with special needs with them to live closer. They can also, or they can just live out of state and be involved in their life to the extent that they can be. When you are picking a guardian, if your neurotypically developing children plan to move across country, I would pick somebody local who could be involved in their care. I wouldn't exclude your children with your neurotypically developing children who are across the country, but you might want to pick a co-guardian as part of that process who is local, because they're the ones that are going to be there day to day if there's an emergency. So that's just something to consider. But that, yes, they can move out of state. Another question that often comes up is funding. The neurotypically developing children might be concerned about how are they going to afford to take care of their sibling with special needs. Something that parents can do is fund a special needs trust with a life insurance policy to make sure that the funding is available for your child with special needs. And you can appoint your neurotypically developing children as the trustees of that trust. So if you're going to do that, I would consider, and I would stay away from ABLE accounts for this purpose, because it's not going to achieve that purpose. So I'm not going to get into the details now, but I would focus on a third-party special needs trust for this purpose. And the purpose being, you are making arrangements. When you are planning for the lifetime of your child with special needs. and forming a special needs trust. And if it will help you, well, it will hold the money that's available that you want for your child with special needs. So you can create the special needs trust. You do need an attorney to do it for you, because to make sure it complies with the regulations. But you create a third party special needs trust, and you can fund that with a life insurance policy and appoint your other people, such as your other children, as the trustees of that special needs trust. Then the money would be available for your child with special needs, and your neurotypically developing children don't have to stress about not having the money to do that. Life insurance policies. There are term policies, there are whole life policies, there are second to die policies. Term policies are an okay option. It's better than nothing. But the reason that I don't like term policies for this purpose, if you can help it, is that if you get a term policy and you don't die within that term, then you don't get the trust, it doesn't get funded with anything. So it's a lot of pressure to put on you to die within the term of the policy. And I have flashbacks to conversations with my grandmother who had a term policy, and she was like, I have to die by this date for you to get any money. And it's just not worth it. So it's better than nothing, but if I were you, I would look, and it's not too late, I would look into either a whole life policy, or the cheaper option, but still serving your purpose, is a second to die policy, where two parents might not benefit from it, because if one parent dies, the other parent, the life insurance policy wouldn't kick in. But when both parents pass away, that's when a second to die policy would kick in and the trust would get funded. So it's the purpose of that is to make sure that there's money available for your children. It won't be available for your spouse, but it will be available for your children, especially your child with special needs. There is special needs life insurance. No, it's not special needs life insurance per se. It's a life insurance policy that you're planning for your child with special needs. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. So the policy is on your life, not for the special needs individual. It's on
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You can get it for the special needs individual, but like a burial plan. But I would focus really for this purpose on making sure that there's money in the trust. And what that does, and you can do that by getting a policy on your life, and then that kicks in when you pass away and the money goes into the trust. You can use the money in the trust for anything that the government won't pay for. So when your child is now an adult, they will likely be eligible for SSI and Medicaid. SSI are monthly checks that go to you for food, shelter, and clothing. They range anywhere between, I would say, $500 and $700 a month. Medicaid is health insurance, but more importantly, it's the primary funding source for adult services. So if your child needs a group home, or if they need a day program, or if they need a job coach, Medicaid will pay for that. Unfortunately, Medicaid does not pay for lots of vacations. So your children can use the money in the trust to take your child on a vacation, or their sibling on a vacation. What we have used money for in the trust. My brother has been in the hospital a lot in this past year. His medical needs have really, for one reason or another, they've been extreme, and we couldn't always be in the hospital with him, for either because of COVID or because we work, and we couldn't be there by his side at every minute. So unfortunately, some of the staff in the group home don't necessarily volunteer to go into the hospitals at this point, but if you pay them more, sometimes they will. So we've used money in the trust to pay for extra support when we couldn't be there, to make sure somebody is available for him. It's not something that works for everybody, but it is something that you can use the money in the trust for, and it's very helpful when you have it available to you. So was that pretty clear? Any questions about that?
No, I think that was very clear. Could you comment for those who are listening, who have a only child, your child
Yep.
has special needs, there's no other siblings out there, what recommendations do you make, or even a single mom who may be on?
Very good question. So if you don't have anybody, if your child is an only child, you can appoint friends or other family members, sisters, your siblings as guardians or trustees. If you don't, and even close friends. If you don't have anyone, which is, again, this totally happens all the time, there are nonprofit agencies that will serve in that capacity, such as Plan of New Jersey, the ARC. Plan of New Jersey and the ARC, they're wonderful nonprofit organizations, and their specialty is to provide advocacy, guardianship, and support services for children with special needs. They will serve as the trustee of your special needs trust or your child's special needs trust. They will serve as the guardian, so they're there to look out for you, for your child when you're not there, and to advocate. There are also support coordination agencies that kick in when your child is an adult, and their support coordinators are available as a wonderful resource to make sure the needs of your child with special needs are being addressed. My goal is now serving in that capacity.
Yes, yes.
So Genevieve, if you want to talk about that for a second.
No, for sure. That was, to your point, as Nicholas was growing older, I needed to get a sense and understanding of what that adult world does. And we quickly realized, I said, as an organization, our mission already fits in. We've always said we exist to support families and autism. Now we've expanded to say, we exist to support families and individuals facing autism and other intellectual disabilities throughout their lifespan. So that meant really understanding that we can have service providers, including support coordinators, that can help us to support our families. And we know it best because we've been working the journey. So currently we're, limited to certain counties, but I always try to, separate the divide, not to say, hey, people have to come to us, but our vision is really to make sure people are educated. And so this is kind of right along the lines of that.
Great. So that's just a perfect example. I mean, you have people that have been involved in the field for a very long time. They have their own personal experiences, so they know they can use their own personal experiences to advocate and give you examples and give you stories and share experiences to be a support network for you and for your child with special needs, even when you're not there. It's important to find a trusted resource, a trusted source, and when you're not around, that's just a wonderful. It's wonderful to form a bond. It's very difficult to do it alone. I have had because my brother has been in a program for so long, we are all looking out for each other. So siblings now are, I'm going to say, getting more involved. And I'll get text messages from other siblings that are of people in my brother's group home. Did you hear this? Did you hear that? How do you want to approach that? So that is something that's very helpful. And there's somebody in my brother's program whose both parents passed away, and we both look out for that individual all the time. We and she knows our birthdays. She knows she knows everything about us, and she has her routines. So we're very much involved in her life. So we do it as a team. Everybody is there because most people share the same fears, and nobody would want it to be in it alone. So we all do it together. I'm here for you. You're here for me. I've had clients who have helped identify provide VCRs for my brother when he only knew how to use a VHS and everything was switching over to DVDs. We're a team. So it's fun. It's a nice bond. We're a nice community because we're all there to share experiences, to support each other. So I can say comfortably, that I would encourage you to form as many relationships as you can. Don't do it alone, because it's too hard to do it alone. Nobody will judge you. Everybody is looking out for more support and more resources. So the one more thing that I just want to touch on for you is that, so we talked about guardianships when your child turns 18. We talked about SSI and Medicaid, because these are all resources that are available to you, and it's important to share with your neurotypically developing children that these things are already in place. You've already taken care of it, right? You share what they are, you explain what they are, and the benefits of having it, and what they but these are supports to make it easier on your family, right? Your child may or may not be placed in a group home. If they're not placed in a group home, then talk to your children, include them in the process as to if you want to make that decision to have them live separately from you. If you do, there are supports that can be put in place when that happens. So when your children become adults and they enter they fill out they become eligible for services from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, they're assigned a budget, and that budget covers a lot of the support services. So your children can be in jobs with job coaches. The job coaches can take them to the gym if they can provide full supervision. They can provide partial supervision, check-ins. It's all according to your child needs. So you can get this budget by filling out an assessment called the NJ-CAT. And the NJ-CAT is a questionnaire that you answer, and you answer questions about your child needs. And based on the way you answer those questions, you're assigned a tier. And based on that tier, you get a certain budget for services. So again, it's reinforcing that you're not alone. Now your children with your neurotypically developing children are not alone. These are other supports that can be put in place to foster that team and help maximize your child's developmental potential. So talk through that with your neurotypically developing children, how you want to make the decisions, what activities do they like. Find out from your children with special needs if they can communicate what they like to do, and you can set up a plan where they're happy. And they're excited about their day to day, and it will give you more confidence. You'll give your neurotypically developing children more confidence that the right plan of care is in place. So that is just talking through these decisions with everybody, involving them in the decisions that you're making, and making lists of your support network, and making sure your neurotypically developing children know where that list is are all really good, helpful things to make everything easier for everybody and make it feel like a team. Because I can tell you, if you do it in these steps and you're recognizing everybody's needs, your neurotypically developing children's needs, and your children with special needs, it just fosters a really cool community environment, a great team, love and support, and it takes away from the resentment of you have to do it. It encourages your children to be involved, knowing that they can be there, and it doesn't have to be their lifetime job. It could be you just teach them how to manage both. So I think that that's a pretty helpful tool to make them aware of the services and supports that are available, so they can advocate even if they need it later on. So we talked about the Guardianship SSI, we talked about Medicaid, we talked about the CAT and the budget and Special Needs Trust to make sure the funding is available. So with that, how are you doing? Any questions?
This has
Personal
been great.
or professional? I'm fine with anything.
No, this is great. I want to open it up to anybody that's on here that has questions. Has this been helpful? Is this overwhelming? Is it inspiring? I always want to know that. I got to tell you, every time I listen to you, I learn something new. The key thing here is that they can go back and forth. It's just, and then the other thing that I take away from me is, just like Senna is going to move out one day, and I have to be okay with that. So parents mourn their children moving out all the time. And I want to encourage our viewers and those listening, is that just because your loved one has special needs, that's not any different in terms of how you're feeling about them moving out. It's just that when, I got to be honest, when you hear the word group home, it just has a negative connotation, to be honest with you.
It does.
I get it. I think that's really what that issue is that sense that I'm releasing my child to some unknown factor versus saying my loved one is moving out on their own and they're finding an apartment. But knowing that it doesn't have to be this big room, this place where people don't care. You talked about the staff loving your brother. And I think that's where people just need to be embrace the fact that this is exactly the future, is that you want your child, your loved one, to be on your own. Have people who will be there and who will care for them. And I think that's really what you got to help us to process. So people are saying this is a lot.
It is. and I do throw a lot at you because there's so much to consider, but I get so excited to share this information that sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I watch it as many times as you want. Ask me any questions. So I apologize if I overwhelmed you, but
I don't think
found it helpful.
Don't apologize, Hillary. Don't, because this is what we need. We need the truth. And we need it to come from a perspective that is life. It's relevant. You're telling us from a personal perspective, and to me, that is 100 times valuable than professional telling me. So
yeah, it's incredibly important, but you can do it. And yeah, I think your point about group homes having a negative connotation is a valid one. But that's why I would encourage you to look at the placements and programs first, because there are some that are not great, but others, are much better. And you can look at the activity schedule. You can see pictures of what they're doing. And you can talk to the staff, and the answer, and a lot of parents will ask, like, how do I know that this is the right placement? And all I can say is that you'll know when you know. I mean, you'll know when you step in. It will be very obvious to you that it's the right fit. You can see your child in there. And if you can't see your child in there, then move on from it. Don't feel that you need to settle, because that's probably not the appropriate placement if your gut is saying it's not. Okay. So I think it's
a lot of love on Facebook. People are interested now, definitely, in looking into group homes. Prior to that, they were not. And also, Jennifer from Ghana says hello. She said,
"Hi." If you haven't seen the picture, there's the picture.
Now, this is great. We're hearing that people are saying that the great perspective that you've given from the siblings' perspective, and how to talk with them and how to include them. So I think that's really powerful in your description of that.
Great. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can email me at hillary@freemanlawoffices.com. Dr. Genevieve has a ton of information. She is incredibly resourceful and knowledgeable about these areas. So I encourage you to get involved with my goal. I really can't say enough good things about the organization. You have just been so creative, and you're a tremendous advocate for individuals with developmental disabilities that I want to bow down to you right now.
Oh, well, you know what? This feeling is mutual. Obviously, I love to connect with people who are passionate, who love and care about this community. And the more I'm in it, the more I realize that this has become my life of work. And I send the word out there to everybody to listen, and I know this video is going to get a lot of watch, because anytime I've done a topic on siblings perspective, people are really amazed, because a lot of us as parents feel guilty. When you talked in the beginning about going on vacation without your parents, going on vacation without your brother, I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I had so much guilt for so long about that, until the year that my Nicholas's school had a camp. So I intentionally timed his camp experience without a vacation. So then the kids, and for the first time, my younger daughter was like, it felt liberating, because then she could be herself. She can have her me time with us. And, so it really goes to the importance of making time for each child separately from everyone. Sometimes we think we all need to do group activities together all the time. And I think we need to isolate and give each child or each individual that their own personalized attention. So when you said that, I cringed for a minute, and I'm like, she's so right. But I can't imagine how your parents must have felt about it, which is really, really important. So
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was, of course, I think it was liberating and also guilt, and the guilt won't go away. I'm just, I think it's important to acknowledge that the guilt is going to be with you. The constant anxiety will stay with you, but acknowledging that is the first step. And then just learning how to manage that is the step after that. So yeah, I think that we've definitely had our share of vacations together and our share of vacations independently, and it's personal preference, but you don't have to feel guilty with either decision that you make. It has to be right for everybody.
Like, excellent. One last
Mm.
question before you go. Someone
Sure.
posted there, if when you're applying for life insurance, you need to let the providers know that you have a child with special needs. I don't think it
No,
matters.
no. What you do is when you apply for life insurance for yourself, you will you'll name a beneficiary. You're gonna have to go through a process to become eligible for life insurance, and they'll give you a quote. And I would encourage you to shop around to see if you can get different quotes and what the benefits are, because every company has different policies. So when you apply for life insurance, do it as young as possible. And because as you get older, it will be harder to get the right life insurance. And then you're going to get a beneficiary designation form. And once you get that form, you can name the special needs trust, assuming it's created. You can name the special needs trust as the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. You can also name your neurotypically developing children as beneficiaries. So you can say 1/3, in my case, there are 3 children, 1/3 goes to my sister, 1/3 goes to me, and 1/3 went to the special needs trust for the benefit of my brother. What I would encourage you to think about is I really wouldn't, you should not leave money to your special needs child. You should not, because if they are, if you, in order to be eligible for Medicaid, which again, as a reminder, is the primary funding source for adult services, they have to have less than $2,000 in resources in their name. If you name them as the primary beneficiary, then of their life insurance policy or your estate, they won't be eligible for government benefits, or they will lose their eligibility. So instead, you name the trust as the beneficiary, and you can appoint other people as the trustees. Even if you love your neurotypically developing children and you know that they will be there for your child with special needs, I would still encourage you to fund the trust, because if your neurotypically developing children get married and divorced, then that money won't be available for your child because it will be subject to divorce in the lawsuit. It'll be considered a marital asset. So it's just something to think about. You can name the special needs trust as the beneficiary, as either entirely or as a third or as 50% or more or less. But I would encourage you to make sure that you do that and then name other people as the trustees.
Wow. This is so much good information, Hillary. We're going to have to do a
Mm.
part 2 at some point, because there's so much to, I mean, you and I know a lot of this content. We talk about it all the time, but for some people, they're hearing it for the first time. They're like, probably just next time talk about the ABLES versus special needs trust, the differences. Do you establish what? And then also one area that I know people talk about is the concept of guardianship versus decision making. Decision making. SDM. I'm forgetting the acronym.
So
Supported decision making.
decision making.
Yes,
Yep.
supported decision making. So I know there are camps that are not pro guardianship because they're concerned of abuse of the guardians.
Yes.
And so therefore promotes more pros and cons of those things, just so that, we balance it out. And so people know that, hey, we're looking at it in composite. So
yeah. Do you want me to talk about it now? I'm happy to.
All right, if you want to briefly touch on that, just so that at least I threw it out there, someone is going to say, what the heck is she talking about now?
Yeah, so I actually spoke at the United Nations about this a few years ago, on World Autism Day. There's supportive decision making versus guardianship. A lot of individuals who are in the, I'm going to say, camp of supportive decision making think that guardianship is a punishment for children with special needs. They think that you are taking away all of their rights, and in fact, and you are making all decisions for them by getting guardianship. When supportive decision making is not a court process, you are not taking away your child's ability to make decisions. You are just guiding them through the process and of making decisions. And personally, I don't look at guardianships as a negative, because their own regulations for guardianship say that you're still encouraged to give your child with special needs as much independence as you feel appropriate. You're still encouraged, the law says you're still required to give them the ability to guide them through the decisions. But at the end of the day, through guardianship, you are able to make decisions for them if they are making bad decisions for themselves. So I'll give you a quick example. Oh, excuse me, by the way, supportive decision making, you don't have that same ability. You are guiding them through, and they're left to their own devices in terms of the decisions that they ultimately make. An example that we've worked out through guardianship is when I had a client who was really not, she was pretty high functioning, for lack of a better term. And she went to programs by herself. She was she's a wonderful self-advocate, but she did get involved in a lot of relationships, and they were abusive relationships. And she still wanted to move in with her partners, and and they were dangerous. They were abusive to her, or they would be move to an area that was not necessarily safe, and she wanted to move there. So through the guardianship process, we set it up so the parents had to give her 3 options of where to live and 3 choices, and she could choose from those choices. And the benefit of that was she was still encouraged. Excuse me. Sorry, my AirPod fell out. She was encouraged to. The parents knew that any of the 3 choices she made would be safe. And she was still given the ability to choose from those. So she still was given the independence and the right to make her own decisions, but they had that comfort of knowing that it was going to be safe and secure. So you can structure the guardianship in a way that still gives them more rights and independence, that legal mechanism in place where your child can be protected in the event they are making bad decisions for themselves.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Like I said, we can sit here and talk and talk and talk. Hillary and I, when we start talking, we're like, don't put 2 people who like to talk together in the same room.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's been wonderful. I mean, your candidness, I really appreciate you being so transparent and just vulnerable with us. I think your vulnerability has helped a lot of us, and it will relieve some parents the guilt. And I'm sure some siblings watching also have gleaned some knowledge out of how to really support and live their life, be able to live their own
and
joyful
just remember
life.
you're
That's
not
what
alone.
we want for everybody.
Okay,
so.
everybody, there have been multiple people who have been through it before you, so just reach out, because you're definitely not alone in going through all the experiences you're going through.
Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation today. We want to invite you to our next program, which is our Empowerment Moment with Dr. G. Come on a Thursday. Never know what the heck topic is going out there, and we'll come here and talk about it together. We are doing our Bowling for Autism event Sunday, April 25th. It's going to be a great fun time. We raise the funds, and you guys know what it is. If you don't know, we give it to families who need the support. We currently have our grant program applications. So if you have clients out there, you have people who know they can benefit from it, go on our website. April 30th is when the deadline for the applications are due. And the monies that's raised here on the soil of the United States stays here on the soil of United States. So it goes all to every family. People across the country are eligible. So it's not just New Jersey residents. So if you know people out there, please share, let them know. My goal is here to be a blessing to them. And I hope you've been empowered by this conversation. Hillary, thank you again for always being such a blessing. Yes, we will take your offer and take you back to Ghana, not to worry. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And we want to see you soon again.
Thank
Once
you.
again, thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.